Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're zeroing in on trimethylglycine, TMG for short.
Or betaine, some people call it that too.
Right, betaine, you've probably seen it mentioned, maybe online or in fitness forums, often comes up with, fat loss or boosting muscle performance.
Exactly. And look, it makes sense why people are interested. We're all looking for things that actually work, that are backed by, well, evidence to help with health and fitness goals.
Totally. So that's our plan today, right? Cut through the noise.
Yeah, we want to really look at the science behind TMG. We've gone through the scientific papers, the meta-analyses, the important stuff.
To get a clear picture of what it actually does,
Right.
based on the research that's out there.
Precisely. Is it worth the hype or not? Let's find out.
Okay, let's jump right in. First things first. What is TMG? Sounds a bit chemical, a bit lab-made.
It does have that sciencey name, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it's actually a natural compound. It comes from glycine, which is an amino acid.
Glycine, okay. One of the basic building blocks.
Exactly. And TMG is basically glycine, but with an extra bit. 3 methyl groups. That's where the trimethyl part comes from.
Ah, methyl groups. We hear about methylation quite a bit in health stuff.
We do, yeah. They're really important. So TMG can be made in our liver, uses choline to do that, but we also get it from food.
Oh, what kind of foods?
Things like wheat bran, wheat germ. Spinach is a good source, beets too,
Okay,
and also some shellfish like shrimp. Even turkey has a bit, but maybe less.
interesting. But I guess the amount we get from just eating spinach or beets isn't huge?
Generally, no. The amounts you get through a typical diet are usually quite a bit lower than the doses they test in the studies when they're looking at it as a supplement.
Right, makes sense. So our bodies use it naturally anyway. What's its, main job?
Its main job is tied into that methylation process we mentioned. It's a methyl donor.
Okay, and what does that mean in practice?
Well, methylation is fundamental. It's involved in loads of things like DNA repair, keeping your liver working properly, just general cell function.
Wow, okay. So pretty critical.
Very. And relevant to our chat today, TMG is involved with genes linked to how we handle fat metabolism,
Yeah.
and also muscle growth.
Right, so it's definitely connected to fat and muscle processes. No wonder people are talking about it for those benefits.
Exactly. The biological links are there.
Which brings us to the big question. Can taking extra TMG actually help you lose fat? What's the science say?
Yeah, this is where it gets, well, a bit murky. The evidence for TMG as a standalone fat loss supplement is, frankly, inconsistent.
Inconsistent? How so?
So we looked closely at 3 big meta-analyses. These pool data from multiple studies to try and get a clearer answer.
3 of them. Okay, that should give us a decent idea. What did they find?
Well, the first one analyzed 6 studies. It suggested there might be a small trend towards reducing body fat percentage.
Okay, a potential trend.
But, and this is key, it found no real change in overall body weight.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a slight shift in composition, but not weight loss itself.
And the second one?
The second one was larger, included 12 studies, and it came to a different conclusion. It found basically no statistically significant effect. Not on fat loss, not on weight reduction, nothing solid.
Hang on a sec. They looked at a lot of the same studies, right? How can they end up with such different answers? That seems odd.
It does seem odd, but it happens in research sometimes. It really highlights how tricky interpreting data can be. The main reason for the difference was down to the stats, how they weighted the studies.
Weighted them. You mean some studies counted more than others?
Exactly. In one of those analyses, a single study, just because of how its data looks statistically, ended up having this huge influence. Like, it accounted for maybe 68% of the final result.
Whoa, 68% from one study. That seems way too high.
It is disproportionate, yeah. In the other analysis, that same study had much less impact, maybe around 10%.
Okay, that makes a massive difference then. So if you kind of adjust for that, look at it more balanced, what's the verdict?
When you account for that imbalance and give the studies more proportional weight, the overall picture suggests TMG on its own probably isn't effective for significant fat loss.
Right, so if someone's hoping TMG is the key to dropping pounds without changing anything else, probably not going to happen.
That seems to be what the collective evidence points towards, yes. It's not likely the answer for effortless fat loss.
Okay, clear enough on the fat loss side, seems pretty weak. But what about the other angle? Muscle performance? Strength? Does it help you lift more or work out harder?
Yeah, that's the other big claim.
Mhm.
And here there's like that, well, there's maybe a little more to it, but it's still quite specific.
Okay.
There was a third meta-analysis we looked at, this one focusing just on strength. It pulled together 15 studies.
15 studies on strengths. What did that one show?
Interestingly, it found a statistically significant improvement in lower body strength with TMG supplementation.
Lower body.
Yeah.
Specifically, so like squats, leg press, that kind of thing.
Exactly those kinds of exercises. But here's the flip side.
Uh-oh.
The same analysis found no consistent benefit for upper body strength.
Really? So it might help your squat, but not your bench press.
That's what this particular meta-analysis suggests, yeah. A bit of an edge for leg day, perhaps, but don't expect it to suddenly boost your pushing or pulling strength up top.
Huh. That's a really specific finding. Any idea why? Lower body, but not upper.
The research doesn't give a definitive why just yet.
Mm-hmm.
It could be something to do with the different muscle fiber types in the legs versus the upper body, or maybe the way those muscles are used, the metabolic demands.
Yeah.
It's not entirely clear.
Okay. And who are the people in these studies? Were they already fit?
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Yes, most of the participants were already physically active. Some were specifically doing strength training programs.
So any benefits were seen in people already putting in the work?
Correct. This isn't about TMG building muscle out of nowhere. And the improvement they saw on average for lower body strength was around 3 to 5%.
Okay, 3 to 5% for lower body in people who are already training. So it's not exactly earth-shattering, but maybe noticeable over time for someone hitting the weights regularly.
That's probably a fair assessment. It's a potential modest boost, specifically for lower body exercises, if you're already training consistently. But, perspective is important.
Definitely. It's not going to turn you into a superhero overnight.
Not at all. And if you're not active to begin with, TMG alone isn't the answer for getting stronger.
Right. Okay, let's try and wrap our heads around this then. For fat loss on its own, especially if you're not very active, TMG looks like a no-go based on the evidence.
Pretty much, yeah. The data just isn't there to support that use case strongly.
But if you are hitting the gym, doing strength training, particularly lower body stuff, maybe, just maybe, it could offer a small extra benefit, like a little nudge.
That seems to be the most positive interpretation supported by the current research. A potential modest aid for lower body strength in active individuals.
But definitely not a replacement for, actually training hard and eating well.
Absolutely not. That's key. Supplements should always support a healthy lifestyle foundation. They never replace it. Consistent training, good nutrition, those are the big rocks.
Makes sense. It sounds like TMG isn't this amazing all-rounder, but maybe a very niche tool. How does it stack up against something like, say, creatine? We know creatine has tons of research for performance.
Yeah, that's a really good comparison to make. Creatine has much, much more robust and consistent evidence behind it.
For a wider range of benefits.
Yes, for improving strength, power, performance across different types of exercise, both upper and lower body. The evidence for creatine is just significantly stronger and broader. TMG seems to have this narrower, more specific potential benefit for lower body strength.
So creatine is still kind of the king for general performance enhancement.
Based purely on the volume and consistency of positive research, yes, creatine has a much stronger track record.
Okay, so summing up TMG, not the fat loss miracle some might claim. And while there's some evidence for a modest lower body strength boost in people already training, it's specific, it's not huge, and definitely doesn't replace the basics. It's a more nuanced story than the hype suggests.
Exactly right. TMG clearly does important things in the body, like its role in methylation. But translating that into a major, reliable benefit as a supplement for fat loss or across-the-board performance, the current evidence just doesn't fully support that broad claim. The benefits seem context-dependent and fairly modest.
So if you're listening and thinking about TMG, you really need to weigh this evidence against your own goals, what you're currently doing for exercise. Is that small potential lower body boost worth it for you?
Precisely. It requires that personal calculation. And it makes you think, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, think about all the other supplements out there hyped up with big promises. How many of them might also have these very specific context-dependent effects, or maybe even less evidence than TMG?
Yeah, that's a good point.
It sort of encourages us to look past the marketing claims for any supplement and ask, what does the actual unvarnished research say? Often the reality is a lot more complex and maybe less exciting than the headlines suggest.